As we're watching this, imagine if she was saying the equivalent things to somebody who had been trying to gain sufficient weight to get to a healthy weight for a long time and kept failing and was blaming it entirely on a medical problem and heavily implying the whole time, as you'll see that she does, that the only solution to this problem that, say, I don't know, a tapeworm eating all your calories before you get them, or insufficient digestive enzymes and just everything goes straight through you so you don't absorb the calories, or whatever medical problem, a difficulty keeping food down, some medical issue with pain and discomfort, or even nausea and vomiting when you try to eat sufficient calories. Whichever one it is, imagine that she is telling someone the equivalent. Just try and flip it in your head and see how differently it comes across. And ask, should it? Why does it come across differently? I think it's just we're not as exposed to one as we are to the other. If you're watching this, you probably live in a country where you're exposed much more to one than the other.
Tell me if this sounds like you. You have always been a big person. Maybe it happened after pregnancy, maybe it happened after puberty, but you.
So I love that idea that that it just happens to you when you get pregnant or you go through puberty. A lot of people lose a lot of weight at those things. It's all about, does it make you eat more or not? Like, that's it. I mean, after during pregnancy, you're supposed to feel hungrier and eat more, to assuming that you are a healthy weight, to gain to grow the baby, because you'll be gaining weight as the baby, and extra food for the baby, and things, all sorts of things change. So you should be eating more and gaining weight while you're pregnant. But after that, if you keep gaining weight after you've given birth, that's because you're eating more than you need. Yeah, you might not snap your fingers and lose any baby weight automatically if you're healthy. But can we stop pretending that puberty or all these things, what they do is they can affect the ratio of fat to muscle. Like puberty, for example, has very different effects on male and female bodies. But it's not overall weight. It can increase appetite depending on the phase of puberty, and it can alter ratio of fat to muscle, but not your overall weight. Your overall solid mass gain, excluding water retention, is purely calories in, calories out. It's only the ratio that is affected by hormones, and your appetite, which can tempt you to eat too much or tempt you to eat too little if your hormones are off balance, that can affect your overall body mass. But again, only if you let it, only if you allow yourself to eat too much or too little.
Have been a big.
Example. Quite a few of the women on super size versus super skinny who were on the underweight side of the diet swap, so like a surprising number of them also blamed having a baby. They said that they'd always been slim, most of them, and then they stopped eating enough after they had their baby because they were stressed, they were busy. They said they just didn't remember to eat anymore. And so many of them said, once I had my baby, that's when my weight started dropping immediately. So this idea that these things like force you to gain weight, no, they don't.
Person. So you think I need to do something about that. So you get on a diet and you start going into the gym and you.
Good, yeah, okay. It's just saying, if you realize you've been too big, let's imagine too thin your whole life, and then you're like, I'm going to do something about that. I'm going to go to the gym and eat more so that I can grow with some fat and some muscle. I want to grow both, and yeah, that would everyone would support that, right? Surely, I hope everyone would support that.
Lose weight for a little while
Good, you
until it
gain
starts
weight a little
tapering
while.
off, and you think maybe I just need to go get a coach.
Yeah, okay. Your gain can taper off, and your loss can taper off. Absolutely. And there could be different issues going on. If you're doing everything correctly, and still, the weight gain or loss is tapering off, it could be that your maintenance calories have changed that much by now. They won't change dramatically like how some people think, but your maintenance calories on your way down in weight or up in weight will change. And if you keep your calories that you're on the same throughout your whole weight loss or weight gain journey, then you're definitely going to taper off in your weight loss or gain, and at some point stall completely, because your maintenance calories has been reached before you've reached your current maintenance calories is what you're on, and you think you're on a calorie surplus to gain or deficit to lose, and you're not. You're actually maintaining. And sometimes it's just water retention. You've either suddenly started retaining water, and that can cause a little plateau for a while, but it's not real mass. It's not solid mass. It's water, I guess, still mass, but you know what I mean? It's not solid mass like muscle, bone, fat, weight. It's or if you're gaining weight, you might have you might need to actually bulk up your internal organs, need to gain weight as well. Like, and if you're very underweight, your internal organs are the parts that get bigger first, not the like subcutaneous fat, muscle, and stuff. It's actually your internal organs that start getting bigger first. And so all those things, you've got to look at, what is it? Is it overall mass? What is that? Break it down. Is it water retention? That's not even real loss or gain. That's something separate. That's your body's holding on to water that you're drinking, or suddenly not holding on to it, and that can give the illusion of a plateau or a stall.
Or you start going to the classes that your gym provides, and you start losing more weight again, but like less than it was beforehand, and your coach tells you, no, that's normal. You got to keep going.
Yeah, they should do. Yeah, same. And again, this is all. I think this is quite reasonable. A coach should say that. It's normal that you slow down, or they should try and explain all the things I've just said as well. Because if you've really slowed down and the plateau isn't going away, you need to look at why. But it's anyway. Let's see what she thinks the solution is.
Until it stops, until it stalls. Maybe you start gaining weight, and your coach tells you, no, you're gaining muscle. That's normal. But
okay, if you're gaining overall mass, and again, if you are able to exclude water retention, maybe you've got one of those fancy scales and it can tell you for sure. And a lot of those scales that say they do are not perfectly accurate. Bear in mind, but say you actually are gaining overall weight, so the number on the scale is going up, and it's not water, right? Somehow you've got the special scales that tell you that, and your coach says it's muscle. That's true. That could be absolutely true. You could just be gaining it in muscle. However, I just want to point out that still means you're eating in a calorie surplus. So, like, there's no other way to gain like solid mass other than to eat in a calorie surplus. It varies whether how much of it is bone density. You can gain bone density as you gain weight and lose bone density as you lose weight. Muscle, if you're underweight, you'll actually be gaining like literally like organ weight, like your organs will be getting bigger again because they've shrunken down and been eaten and stuff. Depending on, so at both ends, all this makes sense. These are common experiences, nothing to freak out about. Just look into them, deal with them. Don't freak out if you're in a plateau. It's quite common, and these are often the reasons.
You still feel like something is wrong. So you go to the doctor, and your doctor doesn't really believe you, but still tests you anyway for diabetes, for hypothyroidism. But
diabetes and hypothyroidism. Okay, bear that in mind for later, that she said you're being tested for those things. And nothing wrong with that. Yeah, great. I actually think you should be tested for those probably at the beginning of your journey, to be honest.
Tests come back negative. And then he tells you it's just a matter of calories in, calories out. Maybe you're not counting your calories properly. And he gives you
so common. Watch the program Secret Eaters, okay? I actually watched a video. I might do a reaction to this video that was an American lady who had lived in the UK and was utterly horrified. She wasn't even, I can't remember exactly. I don't think she was even overweight. I'm trying, I can't remember what she looks like. It's the only video I've seen from her. But I just remember like her being so over the top, like, oh my god, Secret Eaters it's literally called the most evil TV show ever made. I'm like, wow, that's a little over the top. If it was about fat families, I can understand. I don't know if I would still agree, but fat families was very like, it was sensationalist in the way of let's be as mean as possible. So I would understand if it was about that. But Secret Eaters was not disrespectful. Secret Eaters was truly helpful. Anyway, I'll have to do another video on that. But I recommend the show Secret Eaters to anyone who is really struggling to understand why they are not managing to lose weight or maybe gain weight, although they don't focus on that. I think the same rule can apply, absolutely. A lot of people think they eat way more than they do, especially if they don't calorie count. But this show showed that people who do calorie count, they forget what they've eaten partly because they're eating a lot, they're grazing throughout the day, and they're so used to it that their brains don't register. I think some of it might be ADHD, undiagnosed, and a lot of people as well. They're just not registering the fact that they're eating, or they think, oh, it's just a few mouthfuls of this, so they don't even think about it, and they're used to it, and they don't count that in their calories. But when you add up all those little mouthfuls here and there, that can be an explanation. Some people, they would sit down in front of the TV at the end of the day and just start snacking in front of the TV, and they wouldn't count those calories for whatever reason. And they went on the show, and it really opened their eyes, and they were grateful. They went on the show to get the answers, and they got the answers. Most of them were not even funny about about it afterwards. They were like, okay, now I know. And they were given a diet plan and they lost weight. I think the show was really helpful. And it was, I mean, I do think there can be cultural differences. I think some of the reason that that lady thought that it was a terrible show might have just been like misunderstanding British sense of humor and the way that we talk about things. Maybe in some ways it could be different in a way that you might, as a, but then she lived here, so she should have picked up. If she lived here for any length of time, as I think she said she went to university here. Anyway, I'm gonna make a whole video on her, on that, not on her, on that video, and just give my answer to it. And but yeah, I do recommend the show Secret Eaters because this is a really common issue. It's not something to dismiss that, oh, maybe you're counting your calories wrongly. You would be shocked at how wrongly people count their calories. When they're even after trying to, like how way off people can be. And that show gives you a number of different ways that you might be doing that, yeah, definitely. That's not something that your doctor shouldn't say. Your doctor should absolutely point that out as a possibility.
Lecture. So you go back home and you cut more things out of your diet and you go to the gym for hours.
Cut things out, I mean, it depends what you mean by that. I think the most simple solution, if your diet is healthy, if you're getting the right nutritional balance from your diet already, and it's just that the calorie that balance is off and you're in a surplus when you don't want to be, the simplest way is just to eat fewer mouthfuls. Work out how many mouthfuls of everything you're eating, or portion, or kitchen scales. That's how I do it. I don't actually literally count mouthfuls. I know some people do. That is an actual technique of literally counting how many mouthfuls you have of each meal. And it can work out the same, but then you've got to work out, like, do I actually have like the same size mouthful every time? I can't trust myself for that, so I don't know. I actually just weigh out what I eat, but like as I'm preparing it personally. That's my way. But yeah, it's not about saying, oh, I should stop eating cheese necessarily. You could, but if it's like you're eating consistently a cheese snack after your dinner every day, for example, or with your lunch, you could say, okay, well, if I just stop eating that cheese snack and don't change anything else, that will be fewer calories. That's fine if that's what she means. But if she means I'm gonna say I'm gonna not have dairy and I'm gonna swap it for almond milk, or vice versa, whatever. I'm not, like, I'm actually vegetarian and I have been vegan before, so I'm not even getting into that. I didn't mean to say anything like that with that example. It's just a random example. Say like you want to take one thing that you're eating and swap it for an alternative that you think is going to help you lose the weight. I mean, and if it is actually lower calories, then sure. But a lot of the time, it won't make any difference because you're just, especially if you're not making sure that everything else actually stays the same, you might just be making yourself hungrier, especially if you're going for a low sugar, low fat option. Often those things have more chemicals in that upset your gut microbiome more. Therefore, you'll just be hungrier. Like Diet Coke just makes you hungrier, for example, ruins your gut microbiome, so you just crave more food. So yeah, like it's easier just to eat less of whatever you're already eating, unless you have a reason to think that your diet is in some way lacking or not giving you the nutrition you want. Or maybe you just want to try different macros to manage your hunger. That's also one reason you might do that.
Hours and hours. And you start seeing a little bit of results, but not nearly as much as you were. Maybe you hang on.
Probably the answer is that your calorie deficit isn't as steep. Or it can be, okay, there are some really outlier situations. I'll just list a few quickly. If you've been put on a course of oral antibiotics, your gut microbiome has been stripped and obliterated, which will mean, first of all, you might be hungrier. And second of all, you're actually absorbing more of the calories that you eat. So even if you kept your intake exactly the same into your mouth, your intake into your through the gut wall into your bloodstream might not be the same. You might be absorbing more calories out of what goes in because those gut bacteria, the millions of bacteria in your gut, they they use up some of the calories so that you don't get them. Ordinarily, all those gut bacteria are actually taking up some of your calories before you get them, to such an extent that in the United States they're not allowed to do this anymore, but they used to actually pump animals full of antibiotics because it meant they could make them fatter faster without having to increase how much food they gave them, because the gut, they didn't understand how it worked, they just knew it was working. And it meant that, yeah, the cows, the pigs, the chickens, they would eat the same number of calories, but because the gut microbiome was gone, they were now absorbing more of those calories for themselves. It's not healthy for the animal or for the person eating it. But yeah, It works. So, for example, things like that. If you've changed the medication, it could be that it's somewhat lowered your metabolic rate, meaning that if you're eating the same as before, you're now not in a deficit anymore because you're not burning. It could be that if you're eating something that really alters your hormones in some kind of way, look into those things. Look into what has my medication changed. But most importantly, you do have to track your calories and track them as accurately as you actually can. And make sure you're getting the serving sizes accurate, and make sure you're actually, if you think you're eating a serving size but you're guessing, you're likely not getting the serving size that it says on the packet. Say you're eating like so many, say a bowl of porridge oats, and you're looking at the packet and it says one serving equals this number of calories, but you're not measuring out what a serving is. You're not actually weighing out. Say it says a serving is 50 grams with 150 mils of milk, and you're not measuring that. And then on top of that, you're adding sugar or honey or jam or whatever you add to your cereal. Or peanut butter, or in the case of Murray, famously on the show Secret Eaters, he was adding like loads of double cream. And if you're not from the UK, double cream is it's worse than the creams that other people have in other countries. Like it's worse than, oh, what's the other? There are different kinds of creams with different names, but if you don't know, British double cream is insanely high calorie, like highly calorie dense, and he was just lathering it on his Special K cereal, thinking that it was therefore a low calorie cereal, and he wasn't counting the calories from the full fat double cream. It's yeah, things like that.
On for months doing that, maybe years, but you're still not seeing those results. And you think, what am I doing all of this for? What am I going to the gym for hours for? What am I missing all of this stuff for?
Yeah, that must be really disheartening and demoralizing. That would really be awful. And it really upsets me that people like this are coming on the internet and taking those people who are in that situation and giving them this toxic advice to just essentially, well, we'll see what she has to say. I don't like the advice that she's giving here. The impression that she's giving here is so unhelpful. It would, again, always imagine, flip it the other way. Imagine if it was someone telling someone who was very underweight their whole life and couldn't work out why, telling them this kind of advice that, don't worry, don't even try and build muscle and eat more. There's no point, essentially.
If I'm not seeing any results. And so you stop doing it, and you gain all the weight that you lost that, and then some.
And if you're doing that, you're eating a lot more. If you've gained all the weight back, I mean, it depends on how much you lost, like how much it could just be going back to your old ways. But if you're gaining more, yeah, if you're gaining all the way back, it's not even just that. It's unlikely to just be that you've got a hormonal imbalance and now you're not burning as many. You must also be eating more calories than before. That's the only way that can happen.
How many decades have you been stuck in that cycle? How many more decades will it take for you to stop internalizing that cycle as a personal failure and start thinking that something is actually wrong that the doctors aren't looking for? Don't.
But you said that you'd already early on checked, you'd had your blood test for hypothyroidism and diabetes, was the examples that she gave, and it came back negative.
Wait, do not wait until you are 500 pounds like I was before you start looking for those solutions.
I agree. She's talking about medical issues that can be involved. I'm not going to say they directly cause it, but can be involved when someone becomes overweight.
Do not wait until there is irreparable harm before you go and take a look at these other solutions.
Other solutions is just a weird way of saying it. Other solutions, instead of going to the gym, instead of eating less. She's basically saying you shouldn't bother doing those things. Like, don't bother going to the gym, don't bother eating less. Just get yourself diagnosed with a medical problem. And it's not clear from this video if she thinks therefore you will lose the weight. Although I think it seems that she has lost some weight, but she doesn't seem to think that you're supposed to do anything. You're not supposed to go to the gym and eat less. You're just supposed to get diagnosed, get treated, and the weight will just fall off. That's not how it works.
Test for PCOS. Go get a test for Hashimoto's. Go look up.
Hashimoto's is, if anyone who doesn't know, Hashimoto's is the most common cause of hypothyroidism. And however, I actually have Hashimoto's technically, but I do not have hypothyroidism. What that means is my thyroid gland is constantly inflamed. Or it was a lot. I haven't been for a couple of years to get it scanned, but on ultrasound, it is inflamed. And yeah, this whole time it was inflamed. I wasn't overweight, and obviously I'm still not. I've got the really high levels of certain antibodies that attack the thyroid gland, and yet I wasn't, and yet my actual hormones, my thyroid hormones, are normal. Every time I have them tested, they're always normal. So I don't actually have hypothyroidism. For whatever reason, my thyroid functions normally, despite the fact that on ultrasound it's inflamed and it is being attacked by these thyroid. It's likely another sign of my suspected temple syndrome. In fact, people with temple syndrome have an increased rate of thyroid cancer, and anytime you have an increased rate of a cancer of a certain organ, it is often because that condition is increasing the rate of autoimmune attack on that organ, because over many years having your immune system have an autoimmune reaction against one of your organs increases the risk that that organ will become cancerous, because of the chemical changes that happen when your immune system is attacking an organ all the time. So that is another connection possibly to temple syndrome for me. So no, first of all, if you were tested for hypothyroidism and it came back negative, it's not as if, oh, I actually have Hashimoto's. Is going to mean that, well, the Hashimoto's therefore causes me to eat too much, whatever, lower my hormone level, and therefore me not burn as many calories. Like, I have Hashimoto's, but my thyroid hormones are the same. And she said at the beginning of this, you've gone and your thyroid function is normal. So this doesn't make any sense. I do agree though that you should definitely get your thyroid hormone checked out. And I also want to point out that if you are quite overweight and you have a lot of fat on your body, I don't know how much fat it requires, but at a certain point, the amount of thyroid hormone in your body is counteracted by the estrogen that the fat produces. So I should point that out. However, when that is the issue, you can't just take thyroid hormone medication. So it's like, if that is what's happening, if you are that kind of hypothyroid, first of all, it won't show up in any of these tests that she's talking about. It won't show up in a Hashimoto's test, and it won't show up in a underactive thyroid test, the standard one. It will just be a matter of fact that the hormone that you have is normal, but you've got all this extra fat that's counteracting it, so it doesn't have the effect it should. The answer to that situation is to lose the weight. So even if that is what's going on for you, and if you're like, sort of, for example, her size, it's very likely at that point that is happening in your body. It's just that it's all irrelevant to her point here, because if that is what's happening, you just need to lose the weight, and then it will resolve itself. It's not something your doctor can fix for you.
Lipedema and lymphedema, you deserve to have
those things. If you have those things, again, you can only those extra fat deposits. You can't grow overall and get these fat deposits in the lipedema fat deposits unless you're in a calorie surplus. It just means that once you have got them, it is like that particular fat, from what I understand, needs to be surgically removed. It can't be burned off once it's there. You still had to eat too much to get that extra fat in those places in this excessive amount, because again, humans aren't autotrophs. We can't make our own energy. We have to get energy from the outside into our bloodstream in some way, whether it's a drip or whether it's the normal route through the mouth. Whatever it is, has to actually be absorbed into our bloodstream before we can use it. And all that can happen, like, say you have a tumor, right? It's the same idea. Your body can partition more calories into growing the tumor and less into other parts of the body. And what will happen is you will look thinner, like the rest of it, because maybe all the cancer is like using up all your calories to build itself bigger and bigger and storing calories in the tumor itself. But the rest of you will look thinner. And that's before you even get into chemotherapy, which makes you very nauseous, makes it hard to eat, makes it hard to keep food down, stuff like that. So like all these medical conditions, none of them actually break calories in, calories out. None of them. All of them, it's still part of calories in, calories out. Unfortunately, people do oversimplify that phrase, and a lot of the time people think calories out, for example, is just exercise. And no, it couldn't be farther from the truth. Exercise is the least important aspect of calories out, and there are biohacks that have nothing to do with exercise and have nothing to do with any medical conditions that increase your calories out or lower your calories out. It's a lot more complex than people think, but calories in, calories out still ultimately works. It just means that there are things affecting both ends. The calories in part is affected by if you have like a parasite in your stomach, like not just tapeworms, but all the other kind of worms. There's other intestinal worms. You can have all these things going on in your body that affect calories in and calories out, that are not just, what we normally think of. But that doesn't actually break calories in, calories out. It's still, once you understand what's happening, it's still in your control once you understand it.
answers. If this sounds like you, do not wait.
I agree, don't wait.
Tell me if this sounds like you.
But what she's saying is don't wait. She was classing all that going to the gym and eating less as pointless. And I completely disagree. It would be like, as I said, imagine if someone said all of that about someone who was trying to gain weight. I do agree that if you really can't figure it out and nothing makes sense, you need to get get all the tests done, do some research for yourself, advocate for yourself, try and figure out what might be going on. But it still doesn't mean that you just give up on trying to eat more. Say you have a tiny appetite, but you still think, I don't have a big appetite, but I still feel like I should be gaining weight more than I am. Then go and get yourself tested for gut, have a check in what's in the toilet. Do you see little worms in there? Because they might be eating all of your food, for example. They're more common in children, but adults do get them. Even in places that are not tropical, it's just, it's not unheard of. And you could have a digestive enzyme insufficiency. Fine, get all those tested. It doesn't mean that you give up on, I'm not even going to try to eat properly. I'm not even going to try to exercise. I'm not even going to bother until I get my doctor to solve the problem for me. No, like you can help those problems. PCOS, she mentioned right at the end there. She didn't mention the first time, like she did the hypothyroidism, but she did mention PCOS. PCOS, once your doctor knows you have it, he can't magically fix it and make you thin either. You still have to eat less. PCOS increases your appetite, it seems. Not entirely clear, but that does seem to be one way it can increase your chances of gaining weight, possibly. And there are plenty of examples of people with PCOS who have successfully lost weight. Michelle McDaniel, one of the more inspirational people, because she's very fit now. Right? Look on. If you don't know who I mean, I don't know how you found this video. If you don't know who Michelle McDaniel is, but yeah, she is very fit and strong, and she uses the testosterone that PCOS gives her, the extra testosterone that you get when you have PCOS. She channels that into being, as muscular as she likes to be. She likes to be a stronger woman, and there are other examples. You don't even have to go that route. You don't. I'm not saying you have to be a gym bunny like her, but there are so many people in the comment sections of YouTube and everywhere talking about how like their PCOS improved when they stopped eating too much. Yes, like it might make it harder to not eat too much, and the hypothyroidism can. Although my mum has diagnosed hypothyroidism, I gave it to her when she gave birth to me. Is when she developed it. And but she was only briefly overweight years later and then lost it again. But like it wasn't ever like her hypothyroidism made her depressed and lacking energy, and she went to the doctors for depression, and they diagnosed it then. No one back then, we're talking in the late 80s, no one back then believed that if you had hypothyroidism, it would absolutely definitely make you fat. That is a modern idea, like, and unfortunately, it is reducing the rate at which thin people with hypothyroidism get diagnosed. But you can have Hashimoto's type hypothyroidism, like my mum does, and not be overweight and not even feel that your appetite's increased. My mum's appetite didn't increase with it. In fact, it's thought that sometimes the reason we think it increases your appetite is actually its comorbidities. It's not the hypothyroidism itself. That actually tends to lower your appetite when it's by itself. Your appetite will go down because you're not burning as many calories, because your thyroid hormone isn't ramping up your metabolic rate as it should do. So you're not burning as many calories. That's why you're cold all the time and feel like you want to sleep more and stuff like that. And therefore, you actually don't feel as hungry when it's just pure hypothyroidism. But PCOS is common with it. That will increase your appetite, maybe. Diabetes can increase your appetite or lower it. It kind of depends. And yeah, basically, I'm not saying don't get tested for these. I'm saying just the same as if a woman came on here who was very bony and said, look, don't even bother going to the gym and eating more. Just get your doctor to fix the fact that you're underweight. Like, it's really unhelpful. It's really, really, really toxic. And I also want to point out while we're here, this lady's look at her bio here. Sorry, I have to squint. I don't have my glasses on. Supersized life, fat body, fashion and care. Okay, now imagine, I just want to add this on at the end here. Imagine if someone said minus sized life, like mini sized life, someone who was excessively bony and had trouble being underweight, and they said bony body, fashion and care. Like, imagine anyone who had an excessively bony body, like, advertising it as, come here for this content. Like, the only way you're allowed to advertise your body in that way, if you're bony, is if you're saying that you're a recovery channel. Otherwise, you will get, like, basically obliterated off the internet if you even hint that it's a selling point that you're telling people, oh, this is how to look good in a bony body, or this is like, bony-sized life, like, tiny, imagine that. Imagine how people would react, and why is that? Can we please I know I get repetitive always drawing the comparison, but I think that's because not enough people do it often enough. We need to be repetitive until the message gets through. Ask people why the double standard, and then maybe something might change. Let's hope.